So let's begin with a little meditation. Calm our minds while Lisa's computer is booting up. Just joking. So boot up your mind. Try to clean off the hard drive by watching your breathing. Try to let go of the other thoughts. Excuse me. Discursive thoughts that are going through your mind. Focus more internally on your respiration. And absorb your awareness further inside to the center of your heart chakra if you can, away from the cerebral area, and just focus on the nature of the mind behind the thoughts, behind the perceptions, the clear light nature that's always there. You can find that appearing to your mind by just letting go consciously again and again of any content that appears to your consciousness, refocusing as you can on what appears to be the space between the thoughts. The clarity of the mind that allows the thoughts to come and allows them to actually depart. within that clear light nature, try to make visible the sense of your self-identity, your sense of ego. Instigate it. If there's some fear, maybe you're sick or worried, someone's criticized you, you feel embarrassed, or very strongly attached, let that sense of I manifest. And with a part of the mind, subtly analyze, so as not to disturb it too much, subtly analyze how that seems to be appearing. Whether it's something which appears to be just nominally existent, just an idea or concept that our mind imputes, or whether it seems to have an existence from its own side. Independent of naming conception. Remind yourself, as we have meditated previously, many of us have meditated previously on the emptiness of such an appearance to the mind, in the sense that although it appears in this way, the object that's conceived of by the mind relating to that appearance doesn't exist at all. Such a true existence or inherent existence is totally void. We used the reasoning previously of, first after having recognized this object of negation, this gaksha, having recognized that if it did exist in this way, it would either have to be inherently one with the five aggregates of body and mind, identical with them, or it would have to be inherently different, totally unrelated with the body and mind. And then once we had established that to some logical certainty, which would take some time, we eliminated the two possibilities. This sense of I, if it were inherently one with the aggregates, as the aggregates are many, there would have to be many I's. It would have to be a sense of I for not only the body, but each of the parts of the body. The mind, the feelings, the discrimination, all of the mental factors would be individual I's, selves. Or because the I is a unity, there would have to be just one aggregate, one object upon which it was designated. So coming to some certainty that this I is not inherently one with the aggregates. Also, it's not inherently different than the aggregates, because then there would not be the quite understood relationship between I and the body. When the body is harmed, we say, I've been hurt, I'm hot, I've been stuck. So when the mind takes that into consideration, that if the I existed, it would have to be either one with the aggregates or different. And it is neither one with the aggregates nor different inherently from the aggregates. Therefore, the basic premise that it exists is wrong. There is no such I as the conceived of by the mind. The conventional I, the self that does exist, is empty of being truly existent. So at this point we would meditate just letting go, recognizing the object conceived of, believed in, this ego that we've always relied on, that has motivated us into non-virtue, sometimes into contaminated virtue also. This I doesn't exist whatsoever. The I that causes us to be greedy, to be uncaring, to be selfish, to be partisan, to be jealous, to be proud, to be depressed. That I that instigates all those states of mind doesn't exist whatsoever. If you have a glimpse of that for a moment and then lose that, try to recall the certainty that you've developed, remembering consciousness of that emptiness. If that begins to decline, to degenerate, you need to analyze again. Find the object of negation, how it seems to be appearing. Then apply the reasoning again. And then apply the same reasoning, turning your attention to the feelings within your body of pleasure, pain, and neutral feelings. Those are also empty of true existence for the same reason. If they existed, they would have to be either inherently identical with their parts, the continuity of feelings, or the combination of different feelings, or they would have to be inherently different. Feeling would have to be inherently different than its parts, which is absurd. Discriminations, compositional factors, consciousness are all empty. Not only that, all phenomena, not just impermanent phenomena, all phenomena are empty of inherent nature if we analyze them in this way. Phenomena exist merely as imputations, as concepts to our mind, validly labeling, designating a basis of designation, a collection of parts that we can consistently give a name or a concept to. But beyond that, the phenomena in question has no existence from its own side. The way that we apprehend all phenomena, the way that we believe all phenomena to be. You can think if the I, the self, my own self-identity, is empty of this existence that instigates my delusions, instigates my selfishness, even my imprints of which instigate my even striving for nirvana, ignoring others in cyclic existence and just striving for my own liberation. If this I doesn't exist at all, it's possible to work for other sentient beings, merely imputed sentient beings. I can begin to designate myself not just to this continuum of body and mind, but to the entirety of sentient beings. When others feel discomfort, I can be motivated to remove that because it is within the continuum of sentient beings, which I am designating myself, imputing myself upon. Rather than making the separation of myself and others some kind of inherent distinction, recognizing that they're only relatively valid, conventionally valid, self and others, I can engage more precisely in the Bodhisattva's deeds. I can actually engage with enthusiasm, confidence that I can actually do this, work for this, the welfare of sentient beings. So to get closer to that state of the Bodhisattva's perfections, including the perfection of wisdom, for the welfare of sentient beings, to avoid harming them, to be in a position to actually benefit them, eventually to achieve enlightenment so that I can spontaneously benefit them without exertion, without thought, without conceptualization, perfectly, skillfully. I must attain enlightenment. For that purpose, I'm going to listen to the teaching tonight, participate in the class on the Heart Sutra, to better understand the Bodhisattva's perfections, as the Buddha taught, especially the perfection of wisdom, in order to bring that enlightenment, my future enlightenment, into actuality, in order to make it manifest, to purify my Buddha nature. And with that in mind, let's recite the praise of the mother, the wisdom gone beyond, composed, as you remember, by Rahula, the son of Buddha, for his mother. Ma Sherapa Rolchin Make Mingak Namke Ngoni So Rang Rik Yeshe Chuyul Chen Du Sung Galway Yum La Chak Selo Tadyata Gate Gate Para Gate Parasam Gate Bodhi Svaha. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. Shari, the son of the lineage trained who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom. He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Sharitvatiputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tadyata gate gate para samgate bodhi svaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, Well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharitvati Putra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So last time we handed out the midterm exam, and I've got Tenzin's here. I'll use as a basis to read. He actually handed it back. It was meant to be, you're supposed to keep it yourself, so we're going to go over it right now. What do you think? Did you do? Okay. Lisa, did you do? Did you do it? Okay. Carrie, did you do it? Okay, good. Eric? Okay, yeah. Venerable, did you do? Okay, good. Louise? Okay, good. Okay. I just assume everyone else did. Okay, so, okay, Don, what do you think? The Buddha was often referred to as the Bhagavan. What does Bhagavan mean? Explain the Tibetan etymology. What did you write? Yeah. Well, you don't have to read what you wrote down there, just sort of, if you could just say in words.
The Bhagavan is the Tibetan Jews translated as destroyer, destruction, as opposed to the Indian, I think, endowed or open. And Nirvana, possessor, possessor of Nirvana.
Is that right? What do you think? Mark? Okay. It's good to know. What's the Tibetan word, phrase for Bhagavan? What do we say? Do you know? Chomdende. Right. We say Chomdende, Dejin Jeba Na Jombayana. It's one of the epithets of the Buddha when we say all of these names, you know. When we receive teachings from His Holiness, often we recite these various epithets. I think in the Mahayana there are 11 epithets like that. Tomba. Tomba means what? Teacher, founder, the person who first showed. Tomba, Chomdende, Bhagavan, Dejin Jegba, Dachomba, Yangdakba, Zukbe Sangye, Rikpa Dang Shapsu Demba. Like this, there's a. It was Lisa putting up. So the Tibetan Chomdende actually had sort of more meaning than often is associated with Bhagavan. Bhagavan often is translated in text as what? Lord, or what else do people translate it as? Blessed One, the Blessed One, yeah. So literally, Bhagavan, one of the main etymologies is in the Hindu tradition. Indian is kind of endowed with certain excellences. You know, endowed with how many excellences were there supposed to be? Remember? 6 excellences. And so the Tibetans took not only that, they said Chom Den De. Chom means from other etymologies of Bhagavan. They've taken several different etymologies and put them together. So not just endowed with 6 excellences. Which of those 3 syllables means endowed? Where's someone? Do you know someone? Den. Denpa means to possess or to be endowed with. Chom means what? To destroy, right? Da Chomba also means foe destroyer, right? So Chom means having destroyed the enemies, the faults. Den means endowed with excellences. And De means what? Pardon? Means it passed beyond. It means kind of transcendent, having passed beyond the world. So they take it Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to translate it as the endowed transcendent destroyer. You know, trying to get those three. Chumai, have you heard that before? Yeah, that's how Rinpoche. So you could translate it that way. So they've taken a more etymology, than, you know, more meaning to it than just as is often translated, the Tibetans in settling on that translation for Bhagavan. Okay, so let's see. So Thea, a sister. Huh? Oh, there's more. Huh? Okay, yeah, okay. How much did you write? What is it? Okay, okay. What was that? Tathagata?
Bhagavati is the female form of Bhagavan.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
that means the mother of all Buddhas, does it not? That's related to the Perfection Sutra.
That's good. You get extra credit. See, now this is, Tenzin, remember you were asking, nothing, you said some of the questions, not much came to mind. So here's someone who's a teacher and has not only that, gone to probably college. You went to college, right? You went to college, right? Okay. And she knows how to take exams. So when you take exams, it's not just like trying to what do they say, shine the apple or something. You try to put down what is relevant without being totally just write everything that possibly you can, but write in case you might get some extra credit, you know. So in some cases, some people who mark exams would give some extra credit. If you said the name, by the way, the name of the sutra in question, the Heart Sutra, which we're being examined on, is referred to as the Bhagavati, because Bhagavati would be the feminine of Bhagavan, so it would be the female endowed transcendent destroyer. And what does the Bhagavati refer to? Do you know, Frank?
Well, is it the wisdom method, father, mother?
So it refers to the father? So it refers to the father? The mother, because it's female, right? And so it refers to the wisdom of what? Impermanence? Four Noble Truths?
So the wisdom, the mother is the wisdom, and the father is the method.
Right, and which wisdom is this? The wisdom of impermanence, or?
Of realizing emptiness.
The wisdom of emptiness, that realizes emptiness. So this is like the mother of all the conquerors. Like oftentimes we talk about, you okay?
Yeah.
What's wrong? Something. Okay, my voice maybe. Yeah. The wisdom of emptiness is said to be the mother of all the Buddhas of the three times. In fact, it's the mother of the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas also, because in a sense it's the matrix from which they evolve. They have to realize emptiness to achieve their state. So that's why when we talk about Tara being the mother, we're talking about Tara, you know, the manifestation of enlightened activity called Tara. If we refer to her as the mother, we're referring to that particular aspect. Okay, good. So, Thea, how about explain the boundaries of the common prologue and the uncommon prologue? You know what boundaries mean? Yeah.
I wasn't sure by what that word boundaries meant. I just remembered that what the common prologue refers to at that time, at the very beginning of the
Okay,
Heart.
so what are the boundaries? From where to where? That would be boundaries. From where does the common prologue start and where does it end?
From what I understand of it, it starts from the actual description of who was there.
Well, in this case, what does it say? If you have the sutra in front of you, from what words does it start?
At that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva...
That's a common prologue?
Let's see...
Hey, who's going to say something? Louise, can you help?
I think it starts at the beginning.
Yes, that's it. I hear at one time, yes. That would be the common one, the gathering of the bodhisattvas, the monks, and so on and so forth. And the ultimate prologue would be At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena, meaning that whoever was there at that time, their mind streams were ripe enough to hear the teachings on emptiness.
Interesting. Extra credit. Okay.
That's what I
So-
remember reading in the book.
Okay. So the question was, what are the boundaries? So the boundaries would be from thus did I hear at one time up till.
A great community of bodhisattvas.
That would be the common. And
Right,
then
that
the
would-
boundary of the uncommon prologue? First boundary?
Well, the first boundary would be at that time.
Up till? What do you
Whoa, it keeps going.
think?
It must speak to the very end of the sutra then.
Again? No. Because the common, what's it called? The uncommon prologue would come before a question that's being asked. So I guess that goes up to empty of inherent nature, yeah? That's called the uncommon prologue. Prologue is like setting the stage. Usually the common prologue that's usually explained at the beginning is telling where the Buddha was and with whom he was abiding and so forth. And then here, this is the sort of exclusive to this one is that he was absorbed in this concentration, and that Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, was looking upon this practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, Bodhisattva's practice, okay, and seeing them. Okay. Why not? Yeah. Extra, yeah.
I think it was also called the unique prologue because this is the only part that's not found in other sutras, whereas the common prologue is found in all the other sutras.
Okay. So the word uncommon, you could translate as unique. It's just another way of translating. In Tibetan, we could translate it as tumong can mean common. So tumong mayimba, you could say uncommon. But if you wanted to call it common and unique, what would be another way of saying general and unique? Maybe. How would you translate tumong, Kunken? Common. He doesn't want to say. Okay. So yeah, good. Then explain the concentration the Buddha is absorbed in at the beginning of the sutra. So this is for Diana. Yeah. Well, you can check your own understanding.
So the concentration that he's absorbed in is called the profound perception. And
Mhm.
so I believe that refers to the Buddha simultaneously having a direct perception of emptiness and knowing conventional reality at the same time.
Seems like that. That's one of the explanations of it. Yeah, it's not just any old concentration. There are different kinds of samadhis. The word concentration here is tingnezin in Tibetan, samadhi, this Sanskrit word samadhi. So there are many kinds of samadhis that were mentioned for the bodhisattvas and to practice and that may be exclusive to the Buddha. So this particular kind of samadhi would be exclusive to the Buddhas, I think, that is able to perceive not only the appearance of phenomena conventionally, but that they are empty of true existence with a direct perception. That's my understanding. Okay. So, Carrie, name the 8 great bodhisattvas.
I listed 3. Maitreya.
3/8.
Yep, 3/8, and maybe not even 3/8. Maitreya, Manjushri, and Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara, that's what
Avalokiteshvara. Okay, so Avalokiteshvara. Avalokita, sometimes we see Avalokita. Have you ever seen that? So that's short. That's just... No, his name, Avalokita. So what would that be in Tibetan? Actually, that's Chenrezig, Avalokita. Chenrezig, Wangchuk. Wangchuk is Ishvara. So at the end, Avalokit, Kita, Ishvara. So when you make kind of what they call sandhi in Sanskrit. When you put Avalokita together with Ishvara, meaning the Lord, so it's sort of Avalokiteshvara instead of Avalokita and Ishvara. The A and the I, the ending A and the first I combine together to come E. Avalokiteshvara, so it's extra syllable. So that's 3, Maitreya, Manjushri, and Avalokiteshvara. This is not bad, okay? So Venerable Venerable Rita, what do you know? Oh, she's in silence, sorry. So you can't say Dharma things, okay. I thought during Nungna you could say Dharma things. So, Eric, who are some of the other 8 bodhisattvas?
Vajrapani,
Vajrapani.
Kishigava,
Who is it?
Kishigava.
Shetikava.
This one I'm not sure. Samathabhadra.
Samadhibhadra. Good.
That's it.
Okay, that's 6.
Kishtigarbha?
He said Shetikava. Akashagarbha. Sarva, what is it? Sarva Nivarana Vishkambini. Okay. Dipanamsel in Tibetan. So those are Sarva. Sarva, we have many times in many prayers. Om Sobo Shuddha Sarva Dharma. Sarva means all, right? Sarva. What? Which one? Oh. I don't have 2 S's. I don't have any S's. I have some spots on my hand. Okay. Sarva Nivarana. Nivarana means what? Obscuration. Sarva Nivarana. Sarva Nivarana. Vishkambini. Vishkambini. Sarva Nivarana. Vishkambini, I think. You can check. You can look in different sources. Avarana. Okay. Nivarana Vishkambini. Dipanamsel. Okay. What is it? What's it called? Call them Gambini. Okay. Nickname. Okay. So was Atisha one of the 8 great bodhisattvas? No, Atisha is not one of the great 8. The great 8 great bodhisattvas lived during the time of the Buddha. Was Shariputra one of the great 8 great bodhisattvas? He was a hearer, but in fact he's in the sutra, but he's not. It says then the Venerable Shariputra. It never calls him Bodhisattva, Mahasattva. Okay. So, number 5, what is the main object of negation of the Hinayana when meditating to abandon the afflictions? So this question is for Mark. He's very clever. He's like Oma. He's sitting behind the pillar there, so you can't. You know.
But I always sit here.
Oh, you do?
That's my thing.
Yes.
Is the lack of a self-sustaining, substantially existent self, or the emptiness of the first 2 noble truths?
So it's the first thing you said, the absence of what?
The lack of a self-sustaining, substantially existent self.
Again? Self-supporting?
I think I said sustaining, but I meant
Self-supporting, substantially existent. So the lack of that, that's the object of negation? What's the object of negation? What's to be negated? So you don't have to say lack of. So what is to be negated?
a self-sustaining, a self-supporting, substantially existent self.
Right. Okay. So from the Mahayana point of view, remember, they actually do meditate on actual emptiness and subtle emptiness of persons and subtle emptiness of phenomena in order to attain arhatship, but and to become Aryas and so forth. But according to their tenets, as famed has come down to the present even, mainly their great debates over the millennia with the Mahayana was that there was no such thing as emptiness. All you had to do was meditate on the selflessness of persons. So you could say, what's the object of negation of the Hinayana? You could say the self of persons, which they take to be self-supporting, substantially existent person. And then, what did I ask here? Let's see. Okay, so Venerable, what is the main object of negation of the Mahayana when meditating to abandon the afflictions?
If I could only pick one?
Yeah. What's the object of negation? If you want to abandon the afflictions, how many different objects could you take?
Okay,
What
I'm
do
going
you
to
think?
say true existence.
What do you think? Say that again?
I think it's good.
Is true existence an object? Pardon? Why not?
It's described, it's how you're viewing the self or phenomena. So
Why isn't it an object?
Why isn't it an object?
Because remember we learned object is a synonym of existent and phenomena and so forth. So it's true existence, not an object. So is Venerable wrong that she said it's an object of negation? The fact is that it's not an object doesn't mean it's not an object of negation. Do you follow what I mean? It's sort of, if something, does true existence exist? Tenzin, does true existence exist? Okay, good, you got that. True existence, true existence is something that we imagine to exist. It might appear to us, both to our senses and to our mind, that things are truly existent, but they're not really truly existent. So the conceived object, the thing that we're thinking about, is imaginary. It doesn't exist at all. So therefore, it's not a real object. But we can call it the object of negation. It's the object to be negated because it's conceived to exist by the ignorant mind. Pardon? Okay. So true existence does exist conventionally. Is that what you're saying? True existence. So there is conventional true existence.
It doesn't exist in the ultimate form.
Well, but it does exist conventionally, you say, huh?
Not refuting too much.
Well, when we're talking about things that do exist conventionally, like the wristwatch or your car, or what did we free? What were those fish called? Abalone? No, what are they called? Anchovies. Little anchovies that we freed down in the harbor the other day. So anchovy, does anchovy ultimately exist, truly exist? Does it conventionally exist? Yes. Does true existence conventionally exist?
Yes.
No.
No?
No, it doesn't exist at all. There's something like, do the horns of a rabbit exist? So does the water in the mirage exist? Did the dream pot of gold, or let's say the winning lottery ticket that you dreamed about, does that exist? Does it actually exist conventionally? No, it doesn't exist, So like that, that's why the examples are given, that some things do exist conventionally, some things don't exist at all, such as true existence that we imagine, or a self of persons that we conceive of as being self-supporting, substantially existent, or being truly existent. Such a self appears, there is an appearance of that, but that appearance is empty. There is no real self of persons. There is no truly existent self. There is no true existence whatsoever. So true existence is not an object of knowledge. I thought everything was an object of knowledge. Isn't everything an object of knowledge? It's not an object of your knowledge? all existent phenomena, everything that exists is an object of knowledge, can be known. So is emptiness an object of knowledge? Louise, can emptiness be known? Only Buddhists can know emptiness? What? Who else can know emptiness?
I can.
You can?
Yeah.
Yeah. Only when you're Buddha you can understand it?
Absolutely not.
Can you realize it before you're Buddha?
Absolutely.
Carrie, could you put the frosting on Tenzin's cake?
I think
correct. What he
wait,
said is
let's
correct,
see.
I believe.
Yes, you can realize it. Well, there's the inference.
When would you realize that?
When would you realize an inference?
When would you realize emptiness with a conceptual mind through inference?
In meditation.
Well, not necessarily. It might be, you might not actually be in meditation. You might be in the debating courtyard. Lama Yeshe used to say a lot of the monks at Sera realized emptiness in the debating courtyard. You wouldn't necessarily have to be in meditation, but you'd have to be having an inferential cognition at that time. So you would realize emptiness. Would you have to be on the path of accumulation? Preparation? No. The demarcation of the path of preparation is to realize emptiness with the union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight. So you could realize emptiness before that, without that union. You could have a realization, even with have a samadhi, have a tranquil abiding, concentrated on your realization of emptiness. Like I said, that Lama Tsongkhapa, when he was very young, even when he was studying, he had samadhi on realizing emptiness. So it wouldn't necessarily mean a direct perception, wouldn't necessarily mean at first, because he manifested other realizations later, wouldn't necessarily mean even having a union of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight. It could be just on the path of accumulation. It could be a samadhi. It could even just be on the path of accumulation. It could be just a realization of it. You could even have a realization of emptiness before the path, before entering the path. What do you think, Soma? Could you realize emptiness before entering the path? What's the demarcation of entering the Mahayana path of accumulation? Yeah, spontaneous bodhicitta in your mind stream. Okay. So then, very quickly, because we'll take a break in a minute, what is the fourfold profundity? This was just terminology I used, otherwise it sort of gives a hint. Now you know.
Oh, no, I actually don't know the answer to the last question.
Which one? The main object of negation of the Mahayana when meditating to abandon the afflictions is true existence. True existence of phenomena. Or you could argue that it's the true existence of the self. Then you have to give some explanation. Okay, what's the fourfold profundity? Dorje, do you know? No. When I tell you, you'll say, I knew, but I just...
I missed those two classes. The next two questions, I missed those classes.
You missed, okay. So, what's the fourfold profundity? Well, yeah, just...
Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness.
So just those four, not feeling and so forth, right? Yes, no. Fourfold profundity means the thing in question, any phenomena, is empty, and that emptiness is that phenomena, and so forth. Those four. That's just terminology that I'm not sure in the Tibetan whether they talk about profundities. Maybe in the Tibetan also. And then what's the eightfold profundity in the sutra? Carrie, do you remember?
I have to look it up because I didn't remember right off the top of my head.
Oh.
All phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, without stain, not deficient, and not fulfilled.
So there's 8. Okay, so that would be enough just to say, because it just says, what are they? But if you wanted, you might, if you had time at the end, Tenzin, say at the end of the exam, you had time. Once you write down the first answers, the way that usually you take this, then you go back and you check everything and you try to add more detail if you've got more time. Okay, so if you knew more, then you can add. Then, what? The eightfold profundity? No, that doesn't. Eightfold profundity comes before. So we had the common prologue, the unique or uncommon prologue, the question, and then the answer has all these different parts. One part of the answer is the fourfold profundity, and then another part is the eightfold profundity. And I didn't ask further than that because that's about how far we got at the midterm. And so then a list of the 5 aggregates. Dorji, you can do that.
Form, feeling, discrimination, composition, practice, and consciousness.
Okay, excellent. And then Eric, what are the 12 entrances?
Form and sight organ.
Form, visual form, meaning visual form, right? Because that's the object of, and the eye organ.
Sound and the ear.
Sound and ear? You'd have to be more precise. The ear? Because ear, even the word ear just means this. You'd have to say ear faculty, or you could call it organ or faculty. And then?
Odor and the smell faculty.
You could say smell faculty or nose faculty, huh? Then?
Taste and taste faculty.
Tongue faculty, yeah. Then?
And tactile object and
What is it?
tactile object
Tactile object?
and body
Body consciousness?
faculty.
Faculty, not body consciousness, right? That's 10, and then?
The mental object
Mental object?
and consciousness.
And
Mental consciousness.
Mental consciousness, right? Good. Those are called the 12 entrance. Mental consciousness? Was the 12th one? Mental organ, right? Is that the brain? It's the heart. The heart chakra. Subtle wind. No. What's the mental organ? A previous moment of any of the 6 consciousnesses that can act as a starting point for the next moment of mental consciousness. And then the 18 dhatu, that's easy. You just add the 6 consciousnesses to that, right? That are generated through those entrances. That's why the keche or ayatana are called entrances. Explain which of the former 3 groups, aggregates, entrances, and elements can subsume all phenomena. And Tenzin has subsume underlined. So you were like, do you know what word subsume, what is another way I could say subsume? Can include all phenomena or can contain all phenomena. So can the aggregates subsume or include all phenomena? Luis? Why not?
Because there are things like this space that isn't included in the 5 aggregates.
What could you just give? You could only give examples of things, or can you give a general category that's not included in the 5 aggregates? What do you think, Thea?
I thought that everything could be subsumed under the aggregates. And finally going down into the consciousness, and then subsumed under the most subtle consciousness. So that's where my reason.
Oh, remember, no, the 5 aggregates only include all impermanent phenomena. Permanent things are not included, but the 12 entrances and the 18 elements can. And they can include also the tea and cookies, and so we'll take a short break, include those in your stomach. Last time we'd gotten up to the part in the Heart Sutra that's talking about there is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance. There's no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. So this was talking about what? You remember?
12 links?
It's talking about the 12 links, right? The pure and impure 12 links meditation. So if you were to sort of investigate, there might be various things that you would be encountering once you have begin to get some understanding of emptiness or thinking about emptiness. And you might think at some point, well, that's not empty of true existence. That exists. You know, with the Four Noble Truths, that exists. Or maybe emptiness. What about emptiness? Does emptiness truly exist? Come on, why not?
Because it's something that's merely labeled, merely imputed.
But doesn't emptiness is ultimate truth? Doesn't it truly exist? Louise, no? Why not? Nothing truly. So this is a mantra you can have. So from certain starting points, if you, although we may not have established that very clearly in our own mind, that no phenomena truly exist, that all phenomena are not truly existent, that is a starting point. At least you have a chance to answer some questions. This is both of you answered correctly, but we may not understand the ramifications of that. But there might be, before you've actually realized emptiness and applied it to various phenomena, until you have a deep realization, there might be various phenomena, like coming and going. Coming and going is also empty of true existence. But you have to analyze that. Sometimes what appears to the mind, to analyze that, you might have to use a different kind of analysis than the analysis we use to understand the self is empty of true existence, using what we call the 4-point analysis. You might use the king of reasonings, the reasoning of dependent arising, or you might analyze it in a certain way, as Nagarjuna did in his fundamental wisdom. Was that one of the chapters? Who had gone to? That wasn't coming and going. So there was that chapter of Nagarjuna's text on coming and going, where Nagarjuna analyzed coming and going. That was translated by Jeffrey Hopkins many years ago, a little booklet from the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. And then also, I think it was Chandrakirti's commentary to that chapter was analyzed. And then also Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to Chandrakirti's analysis was also translated by Jeffrey Hopkins, because that particular topic is very, it's a little bit different how you analyze coming and going, stepping and what is being stepped over and so forth. So here, this is going through all of the different kinds of phenomena.
Did you say that emptiness doesn't truly exist then? Is that what you said?
That's what I said. Is that, maybe it's wrong. Okay, let's check. Because you thought there should be wrong. You thought. So what does, so we'll just check how you understand it. True existence, is that a phenomena? So it's hard to say if you don't have do you have an opinion? Or say a phenomenon, as a singular.
Well, it just seems like if anything truly exists, it would be emptiness, but maybe it doesn't exist either. I don't know.
But let's say, remember we were talking before, I said, does true existence exist? And we were saying, no, true existence does not exist. It's something that's imagined by the mind. So no phenomena is truly existent, although we haven't yet established that in our own minds yet. We're still studying to understand that. That's kind of what's understood here. So emptiness itself is a phenomena. It is something that can be known. Phenomena is one of the synonyms of existent and object of knowledge and so forth. It's sort of like the Sanskrit word dharma. That means phenomena, that which can hold its own entity, uphold its own entity. So emptiness does exist. Emptiness is a phenomena, but emptiness is not truly existent. No phenomena is truly existent. So emptiness itself is empty of true existence. You can have an idea about emptiness, thinking about emptiness with a conceptual mind, thinking that emptiness is truly existent. That, you know, it may not be a very correct understanding because no phenomena is truly existent, but emptiness itself is empty. So we talk about the emptiness of emptiness when you talk about the 16 emptinesses and the 20 emptinesses, as are explained in the Prajnaparamita. It's not like there's the emptiness is applied to different kinds of bases, like emptiness of time, emptiness of the 10 directions, emptiness of emptiness. So at a certain point in the Bodhisattva path, one might spend more time in understanding that to overcome the grasping that emptiness itself is truly existent. Okay.
What often gets me is the difference between something exists and something truly exists. So yes, many things exist, and this exists, and this exists, but none of them, that doesn't truly exist, that doesn't truly exist, and that doesn't truly exist.
So does Frank exist?
Yes.
Does Frank truly exist?
No.
No. So there is a difference. That's the
key.
That's one of the important things to understand, that perhaps when people misinterpret the Prajnaparamita Sutras, when the Buddha said this does not exist, that does not exist, he was talking about they don't exist truly or ultimately. Some things don't exist at all, like true existence, the horns of a rabbit. You know, there's certain phenomena that don't even exist conventionally. But of those phenomena that exist conventionally, all of them are empty of true existence, including emptiness itself. Okay. So let's go on a little bit further here. There's no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There's no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. So this is finishing this enumeration of various phenomena. So suffering, origination, cessation, and path is referring to what? Four Noble Truths. Why are they called Noble Truths? Do you know, Dorji? Because they're noble? They're like really good, or what? Because they're actually, the word that's being translated as noble is actually Arya. They're called the Arya Satya, the Arya truths. Why are they, and Arya could be translated as noble. Why are they called Arya truths? You gave, I think you said?
Yeah. Well, but they're known, I mean, I guess at the path of seeing, once you become an Arya, then you know those four truths.
You know that they are known directly by the Aryas. So that's one of the reasons they're called Arya truths, or noble truths. They're known by the noble ones, the Aryas. Okay? So suffering, what does suffering mean? Everything's suffering? Everything's suffering, right? Is that the truth of suffering? Venerable? Everything is suffering?
All samsaric experiences are suffering.
What do we say in the what do they call the four seals? What's the first seal? All contaminated phenomena are suffering. So contaminated phenomena, as Tibetan word sakche, they used to translate it as with fall, or I think contaminated is not one of the old translations for that. It means contaminated phenomena are phenomena that are either the delusions themselves or conducive to generating the delusions. Now let's say the Buddha's body. Is the Buddha's body a contaminated phenomena? Why not? If you look at the Buddha's body, you can't generate envy or anger? What do you think? You think so what? You don't think so what? What? I'm not sure what she said. What's? You don't think so what? Uh-huh.
If you had that high level of realization?
Uh-huh.
No, because it's not contaminated phenomena.
But what about the Devadatta? Didn't he get angry at the Buddha?
Seeing the Buddha.
You're referring to. I mean, there are many bodies.
Well, how many bodies are there?
I believe 4, but I couldn't name them all.
Well, we're
And
talking
then
about
there's-
physical.
And then,
We're talking about physical.
sorry, then there's the physical body.
Talking about physical body, probably.
Well, just one physical body.
Well, there's Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. So according to the Hinayana, the Buddha's form aggregate, the Buddha's body, or the form aggregate, is contaminated. Because we say he has attained nirvana. While he was alive, he attained nirvana with remainder of the contaminated aggregates. Still had contaminated remnant that he was sort of, because before that, he had been, that body had been thrown by karma delusion. According to the Mahayana, the Buddha's body is uncontaminated, just as Lisa very eloquently defended her position. Buddha's body, if you actually see the Buddha's body, it is not conducive to generating the delusions. But if you perceive, because of your delusions, in the presence of the Buddha, you may have your own misconceptions about that. Just like in the presence of the Guru, you might think the Guru is wrong. But maybe the Guru is not wrong at all. So it is possible that you can have a misconception, and but that on the basis of uncontaminated phenomena. Uncontaminated phenomena are bliss, let's say, blissful. So if you actually perceive the Buddha's body or other uncontaminated phenomena like maybe realization of emptiness, if you had an experience of that, you would not, it would not be conducive to generate the delusions and so forth. Do you have a question?
So are visual objects contaminated for me and uncontaminated for a Buddha?
So whether phenomena are contaminated or not, I think from the Hinayana point of view, maybe it doesn't depend on who sees them. They're either contaminated or not. For, let's say this piece of, was this ginger cake? This piece of ginger cake, if you talked about it from the point of view of this conventional phenomena, is this contaminated or uncontaminated?
For me, it's contaminated because it can please me. It can be a contributing factor to my delusions.
What about for the Buddha?
No, it cannot lead to delusions.
So can't it's but is that would it still be called a contaminated phenomena from the Buddhist point of view? It's not conducive to generate contaminations in the Buddha's continuum, but does the Buddha perceive, how does this appear to the Buddha's mind? How does it appear to us? It appears to us due to our contaminated karma. So you could say most of the things of samsara are appearing to us due to the power of our contaminated karma. Do we have any uncontaminated karma that's manifesting? Really? Uncontaminated karma would have been created through the realization of emptiness, actions created through the realization of emptiness, not contaminated with grasping to true existence. So probably we don't have, unless you're an Arya being, probably we don't have any uncontaminated karma that's still to ripen.
Count like merit that would result in those realizations?
As uncontaminated? I don't think so. Say, for instance, if you create contaminated karma now, even virtue, contaminated virtue, because virtue, even the virtue we create now is called contaminated virtue, because it's not like, you might say, excuse me, this was good quality virtue, you know. I gave the Dalai Lama cake, or I gave him a mala, or I did this for my Lama. That's uncontaminated virtue. How can you dare say such a thing? That's contaminated virtue because it was contaminated by your conception of yourself as being truly existent, and the recipient of your action as being truly existent, and the action as being truly existent. So if we meditate on the emptiness, like the Bodhisattva's activities, not just in dedication, but all of the actions the Bodhisattva does, they try to meditate conjoined with the realization of emptiness. But our realization of emptiness is very small, whether we've even realized emptiness or not, probably not realized it even yet. We just have maybe an intellectual understanding. Realization would only take place when what? When you realize emptiness would only be what? When you actually had on the basis of a correct reasoning, and you had an inference that infallibly inferred the existence of emptiness, then you could have a realization, actual realization. Correct. What we have now maybe is correct belief. If we have strong confidence, or even we think we meditate, we use these reasonings, we're sure. I had some experience, shaking, hair, tears coming, and maybe that's just correct belief yet. Maybe it's not actual realization. Geshe Topten, who died some years ago, Geshe Topten, who used to come to Italy a lot, and was one of the yogis, one of the main yogis in Dharamsala. Did any of you know Geshe Topten? Geshe? Yeah? He taught here also? Geshe Topten used to debate that even correct belief was a kind of realization. So there's some debates like that, but it doesn't mean realization that you've actually realized. It means some kind of something similar.
Even the things we do in relation to holy objects, they're contaminated because we have a wrong understanding.
There's still contaminated karma, but it can be virtue that can, let's say, for instance, if you dedicate your virtue, even if you don't dedicate it in the emptiness of the three spheres, if you dedicate it to enlightenment, that can become a cooperative cause of achieving enlightenment. But it doesn't, it itself is not, say, when we're dedicating our merit now without realizing emptiness, it's not an uncontaminated karma. It's going to bring about events which get us closer to realizing emptiness, to bringing about that, and in which case, when we realize emptiness, then we can create uncontaminated karma. So even the virtue we create with respect to the guru or circumambulating the stupa is still contaminated karma.
So it seems like we need to fine-tune that definition of contaminated is done with a misunderstanding of how things exist. Because it doesn't seem like, studying emptiness, for example, qualifies as one of those things that can contribute to a delusion.
Oh, sure. You could think, I've realized emptiness. I understand emptiness. Pride, you can think, wrong. Yeah, it doesn't. It's only when you have a realization of emptiness that can start to counter. You just feel tremor?
That was your realization of it.
Okay, maybe someone developed bodhicitta somewhere in the property. I felt I thought earthquake. So you have to check. When we talk about, if we have a chance to study Madhyamaka Avatara, then we can go into more detail about, or in other, when the other lamas teach about emptiness, you can ask these questions from the Prasangika point of view. What contaminated phenomena are is different than from the Hinayana point of view of what contaminated phenomena are. But in general, we say all contaminated phenomena are suffering. Not all phenomena are suffering. So, what is the origination of suffering? I asked the question first. What's the origination of suffering? Good. Karma and klesha. According to sort of precise, when one understands the Four Noble Truths, if you look at different, sometimes called the cause of suffering, but it's actually kungjung in Tibetan. It actually means the origination of suffering. So suffering arises from directly, the immediate cause of suffering is the ripening of our karma. That's the main way that negative karma ripens on our aggregates. What about positive karma? That doesn't ripen as suffering. It does? No, it ripens. By definition, virtuous karma ripens as happiness or pleasure, but it's still the nature of suffering. Remember? So, from the point of view, when the Buddha said, this is suffering, he was talking about samsara. All of the things that we think of as pleasurable, when you talk about the truth of suffering, all the things we think about as pleasurable, fame, love, cake, chocolate chip cookies, pizza, what else? Borg, Bjork, the singer, Richard Gere, whatever. All are the nature of suffering because the very encounter with them, if the experience that you had was real happiness, encountering the object that brings that about continually would cause you to have happiness continually. But we know that the longer you embrace Richard Gere, at a certain point it changes into obvious suffering. What you're doing is you're replacing one suffering, the desire, the unquenched desire or thirst, you're satisfying by contact with the ice cream or the taste or the sweet ego-pleasing words or embracing. You're diminishing one thirst. And the way that you do it is in contact with a contaminated phenomena. That's usually how we do it. The meditators, of course, they diminish their thirst, their delusions through meditation on emptiness. So that goes down without replacing it with some contaminated phenomena. The only way that we can eliminate our thirst is to take contaminated tea or water or whatever. And that itself is the nature of suffering. The more tea you have, at a certain point you realize that it doesn't bring you pleasure any longer. Even to hear sweet ego-pleasing words, you say, enough, okay, give me a break. You keep on hearing, I love you, I love you, I love you. At first, maybe, it's very nice. Then later, it changes into obvious suffering. The classic example, the Buddha said, if you're sitting in the shade and you go, as I say to Thea, let's go sit in the nice warm sun. And we go, oh yes, this is nice. So the suffering of cold goes down, the suffering of heat goes up, and we call that pleasure, this part, while the bigger suffering is still going down. When now the suffering that's getting bigger has become larger in intensity, we start to feel that as discomfort. We recognize it as suffering of suffering. Then Thea says, George, why don't we go sit in the nice, cool shade again? So it's like that with everything, the truth of suffering. Truth of origination is the fact that suffering arises from contaminated karma, both virtue and non-virtue, and unpredicted karma. And that karma was arisen from the klesha. What does klesha mean? This is a Sanskrit word, right? Delusions or stains. What do we translated klesha as? Afflictions, usually, right? So then that's the problem. So it's like two of the truths are the problem: truth of suffering and the truth of origination. Then the solution is the truth of cessation, which is realized by the Arya beings, the Arya truth of cessation, and the truth of the path. So what's the truth of cessation? Is it just a truth, or is it true cessation? Or what is true cessation? It's the ceasing of suffering and the cause of suffering from the root, so that it will never come back again. So that cessation is not like, you finish school and you have a cessation of school. That's not called true cessation. Or what else do we use the word cessation for? Oh, the electricity ceased. I hope this is electricity. So that's not called true cessation. True cessation is when you have eliminated something from the root through the application of the antidote of realizing emptiness, so that how did you eliminate suffering? Because you've eliminated the cause of suffering, which is karma and klesha, through the realization of emptiness. Can you cease karma? When you realize emptiness, you no longer have karma? Because when you become an arhat, you have ceased all of the delusions, right? All of the afflictions, all the klesha. Dorje, what do you think? Yeah. Yeah, probably, yes, I think. Okay, all the afflictions are ceased. They'll never come back in your continuum. What about your karma? It's ceased? Well, what does it mean? Cessation means the cessation of suffering and the cause of suffering.
Isn't it like the stain? The stains are still there?
Well, what does it mean to cease karma then? Pardon?
If you broke the 12 links, you'd have no karma.
If you broke the 12 links, you'd have no problem. Okay.
You have no karma.
You have no karma.
Yeah.
There's no karma any longer? You don't have any karma in your mind stream? So even the arhats, even the arhats experienced various kinds of results of their past karma. Who was it? Mahamoggallana? Wasn't he the one who was beaten up by the story, some followers of a non-Buddhist teacher, misguided teacher who had passed away, they came to Mahamoggallana and asked him where the teacher was born. Is that right, Venerable? You don't know. I mean, you can shake your head, yes or no. Maybe. And Mahamoggallana said he was born in hell, he saw with his clairvoyance. And they were upset, obviously, because he was their teacher, right? And so they beat up Mahamoggallana until he was almost dead. He still was alive, but he was like really beaten up. It's like going to Los Angeles or something. And you're from Los Angeles, right? Yeah. So, I'm just joking. That was a result of his past karma. So he didn't cease his karma. Karma wasn't ceased. So what does it mean, cessation of karma? Because cessation means the cessation of suffering and the cause of suffering. Wasn't he suffering, first of all? Is that wrong that he ceased suffering? Well, like the example, the Buddha, even when the Buddha had a fever and the monks who were bathing him and they said, "How do you feel?" The Buddha said, "There are waves of pain coursing through my body, but my mind is at ease." So from the point of view, Buddha had no even pain in his body, because the Buddha was actually an enlightened being, but manifesting as arhat according to the Hinayana tradition. But still, there could be pain, but there's no mental suffering. There's no response. There's no ego. There's no sense of owning this or sense that this is real. So suffering, in that sense, is ceased, at least even from the Hinayana point of view. And karma is ceased in the sense that you no longer create contaminated karma. Up until you become an arhat, there's still some klesha left, so you still create some contaminated karma. Probably virtue near the end, contaminated virtue, but until then, you're not, you're still creating some contaminated karma. When you cease, when you have cessation, truth of cessation, you're no longer creating any contaminated karma, virtue or non-virtue, whatever. What's the truth of the path, the true path? Pardon? So that's what it is. The Buddha said, there's a way out of suffering. What is the true path, if you wanted to be precise?
Realization of emptiness.
Is that true path? Nirvana's peace is sort of more like the true cessation, isn't it? True cessation is actually nirvana, or let's say enlightenment. So when all the delusions are ceased. Truth of the path. So what is an example of true path? It's a meditative equipoise directly realizing emptiness. That's the true path. And you might say, excuse me, I read in my catechism, my Buddhist catechism book, that the true path is the Eightfold Noble Path, right? Did you read that? As it says in some, that's not the main, that's from the point of view of Aryas, that's a way that they approach actual true path. This maybe in most of the Eightfold Noble Path is kind of imputed true path. Actual true path is direct realization of emptiness. It is that brings about true cessation. So all of these things, say for instance, if one is thinking about the goal, what one wants to achieve. One wants to achieve cessation of suffering, and to bring that about, one has to realize the path. One might conceive of the Four Noble Truths themselves as truly existent. So the Buddha said many times, like example, in the Prajnaparamita Sutra, the Buddha said, a monk or nun who is keeping discipline, but conceives of that to be truly existent, I don't call that real discipline. Say, for instance, if you were to think, if you were to think the illusory woman, to say that there's an illusion of a woman for a monk, or illusion of Richard Gere for a lady, and you were to think, it's the nature of suffering, it's impermanent, and so forth and so on. If the person if that's the only way they were to practice their ethics on that basis, that wouldn't be real ethics. That wouldn't be the perfection of ethics. It would have to be by realizing not only the temporal antidotes to things, but that phenomena it is actually illusory. It doesn't exist at all the way that it appears. Is there something illusory in the camera there? You're looking.
It's been saying 20. Oh, okay. Sorry. It said 21 minutes, but it seemed like 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes.
It's just my mind.
Oh, okay. Your mind is slowed down. You're realizing emptiness.
Right as you asked, it changed to 20.
Okay.
From 21 to 20.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Thought time had stopped. So it'll be interesting on the DVD if that just keeps on saying the same time for a long time. Yeah. So the Buddha often mentioned that if you were to take the wrong, let's say if you were just to take the way that the tenets of the Hinayana propose, without a realization of emptiness, from a Mahayana point of view, from the Bodhisattva's point of view, that wouldn't be actual, real practice of ethics and so forth, because the person would be grasping at all of these things as really existing. Remember, from not the final view of the Hinayana, where they actually realize emptiness, but according to their tenets, phenomena all phenomena truly exist. Does the person truly exist for the Hinayana? Person truly exists for the Hinayana. Person is empty of being self-supporting, substantially existent, but the person that does exist is truly existent. For the Hinayana, all phenomena that exist, all phenomena, because phenomena implies that they exist, all phenomena are truly existent. So the person who does exist, the imputedly existent Venerable Dream, is a truly existent phenomena. Everything truly exists, and outer phenomena, a obvious example. So from that point of view, even the person is practicing on the basis of some understanding of the path. They're able to develop a certain amount of renunciation and a certain kind of concentration and wisdom that is still contaminated by the grasping to true existence. That's not real ethics, that's not real concentration, that's not real wisdom. So here we're not refuting that these things exist at all. What the Buddha is doing is mentioning that all of these practices and outer phenomena, even the practices that bring them about, the realization of the 12 links, the realization of the Four Noble Truths, all of those things that exist conventionally don't exist ultimately. They're all empty of true existence. So sometimes you may have an impasse in your practice, thinking, I can't achieve that. I just don't have what it takes. So you meditate. The Bodhisattva would meditate on emptiness to recognize that there is nothing that is truly existent. The only way, if something were attainable, the only way that you couldn't attain it would be if it were truly existent. If it is attainable and it's not truly existent, you can attain it. You can develop that confidence. You can overcome depression. You can overcome the feeling of insufficiency. What's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? When you feel, I can't. Inadequacy or low self-esteem. Okay? Different kinds of laziness that the bodhisattvas can develop enthusiastic perseverance by meditating on the emptiness of the various causes of, like for instance, the laziness that's attached to samsaric pleasure. By meditating on emptiness of the objects of pleasure and of the attachment that's attached to them, one can actually overcome that, and then one can actually overcome one's, lust or attachment or addiction or whatever. That's the actual way. The lesser way would just be applying the temporal antidotes to those. So here the Buddha, or let's say Avalokiteshvara, in the inspiration of the Buddha, is explaining this is how from the Buddhist point of view, the Bodhisattva's point of view, in emptiness, it is in the realization of emptiness, none of these things are truly existent. There's no suffering, no origination, no cessation and path. So in the Bodhisattva path of seeing, one meditates on the Four Noble Truths, but not in the sense that is understood in the Hinayana. One understands, when one is understanding there is suffering, one understands that suffering arises, designated, merely imputed suffering arises from the origination of suffering, merely imputed karma and klesha. They do exist conventionally, but they're empty of true existence. This is how one would be meditating on the path of seeing. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. So, there's no exalted wisdom? What is exalted wisdom? Can be, Yeah, usually exalted wisdom here is the Tibetan word yeshe. Sometimes you translate primordial wisdom. In Sanskrit, I think jnana or jnana. And that, if you talk about the perfections, the 10 perfections, usually we talk about 6 perfections, right? The 6th perfection is the perfection of wisdom, which is called what in Sanskrit? Prajna paramita. Prajna is the wisdom that realizes emptiness. The 10th perfection is jnana or jnana paramita, and that's what's called exalted wisdom. But exalted wisdom means other things also, but that particular wisdom is something that is realizing the conventional reality. You might think, well, that's lower than prajna paramita, right? Conventional wisdom doesn't sound like anything special, but that means correctly realizing that phenomena are merely imputations. So on the 10th bhumi, the bodhisattvas have a special practice of that, excelling practice of that. So that kind of exalted wisdom, it might be interpreted that way. In some commentaries, it might be interpreted just the way that yeshe or jnana is meant in the Prajnaparamita also is any path consciousness can be called exalted wisdom like that. So we might think, we might get caught up thinking, I don't have this kind of wisdom. I'm incapable. I'm ignorant. I've got all sorts of problems. I'm a dummy. What else do people say? What do you say? Who am I to be able to? No, what do you say to yourself when you feel depressed? What do you say? I don't feel like. That's just laziness. No, what like when you feel, this sense that you can't attain something, you can't do something. Not smart. I'm not smart enough. I'm just no good. Maybe I don't deserve it. I'm a failure. Nobody likes me. I'm not worthy of being loved. All of these different things, right? Different kinds of senses of low self-esteem and so forth. Here, in a sense, if you imagine exalted wisdom, if you grasp it, even if you think you have exalted wisdom, you realize something. I have exalted wisdom of realizing path consciousness, or exalted wisdom that realizes conventional reality, whatever. If you're grasping to that as truly existent, you don't have it. It is in emptiness. There is no exalted wisdom. There's no conception while you're in emptiness that this wisdom is realizing emptiness. That's a conceptual thought. Right?
How do you know if you've realized emptiness?
Okay, how do you know? So in emptiness, there's no thought. In emptiness, that means in the mind absorbed into direct realization of emptiness. In that kind of realization, there's no thought, I am realizing emptiness. Before that, if you were using analysis to bring that about, in some cases it's remembering consciousness, but maybe you reanalyze, there's a conventional mind where there's a perception of the self. You may already realize the self is just imputedly existent, but the self seems to be appearing as truly existent and so forth. But when you realize, let's say, the emptiness of the self, at that point, it's as though the mind realizing emptiness and the object emptiness merge into one. There's no sense of dichotomy or duality between subject and object. And like water poured into water, pure water poured into water. So in that meditative equipoise, there's no thought, this is it. I got it. This is the ultimate. This is emptiness. That's not the meditative equipoise. How would one know one realized emptiness? Because when one, in post-meditation, what we call post-attainment, in our Tibetan classes, I was trying to think of before, they say jetop. Jesu topa means after or subsequent to attainment. So in the meditative equipoise, you have realization of emptiness. Only emptiness appears to the mind, only a non-affirming negation. But that has been impelled by this logical wisdom analyzing consciousness. So it's not just nothing mind. It's not just like a blank mind. It's like you blanked out or you're in a coma or something. That is a wisdom consciousness that is actually knowing reality, ultimate truth, actually realizing ultimate truth. Subsequent to that, when you start to arise from that meditative equipoise, it doesn't mean get out of your chair, but you're no longer in direct realization of emptiness, or your seat, rather, your cushion. When you have a conventional cognizing consciousness again, when you're realizing conventional truth, then the remembering consciousness arises. That was emptiness. You can remember that you've realized emptiness, and you remember the analysis before. You remember that you analyzed with the conventional mind. You had the inferential cognition that, let's say, the self is not truly existent because it's not truly existent. The one with the aggregates not truly existent other than the aggregates, because if it did exist truly, it would have to be either one of those. Therefore, you've gone through this analysis. You remember that, and you remember the experience of the certainty of seeing that directly. Equipoise means equally balanced. You know, the mind is absorbed into the meditative state, not sort of vacillating out, not sort of, you know, coming in and out, and like our meditation now, maybe you got a glimpse of this and then it goes out. Meditative equipoise is something where the mind is very stable, and when we talk about meditative equipoise, usually it refers to this kind of union of calm abiding and penetrative insight. So if you have a meditative equipoise on emptiness, it means you can have a meditative equipoise which is a direct realization, or you can have a meditative equipoise which is an inferential understanding, that is something with a mental image of emptiness. Still, the mind can be equipoised, absorbed in such a way that it's not disturbed at all. It's just experiencing that without a sense of subject and object.
Please forgive my ignorance, but
I'm not sure.
If the meditation, if one is absorbed in a meditation of emptiness, where the object emptiness and the mind are merged with one, so that there's no mind.
They are as though it seems to the mind. It's not that the mind and emptiness become one, because the mind is a conventional phenomena. Emptiness is an ultimate phenomena. The mind can't become emptiness. But it seems as though, your mind is one thing and emptiness is something else. But when you have that meditative equipoise, there's no sense of the observer and the object observed. There's just the experience of the object observed. It's as though the mind has merged with the object.
How is that different than just meditating on nothingness or just blank?
Because meditating on nothingness will not have any kind of effect. You know, the goats in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's cave in Laudo, just sitting there maybe, or when we're...
I think that's how I meditate.
Yeah. So just meditating on, I mean, we've done that numberless times. We've meditated on nothing, you know, nothingness, or one of the realms of the formless realm is called nothing, you know, nothing at all. Just a meditative equipoise that there is nothing. But that's not at all a realization of emptiness. Or even, say, absorbing the airs in the central channel and just having an experience of the clear light. Certainly from the Gelugpa tradition point of view, that's not at all a realization of emptiness. That's just an experience of the conventional nature, subtle conventional nature of the mind. Or as we look at the clear light nature of the mind, that's not a realization of emptiness of the mind. That's just a realization of its conventional nature, this conventional clear light nature. Clear light can also sometimes refer to emptiness. But when we talk about the clear light, conventional clear light nature of the mind, we just mean this nature of the mind as being luminous and clear. You know?
How can one avoid straying to this formless nothingness
by
law.
actually developing wisdom sequentially. That is, understanding. It's not just a matter, like you meditate on emptiness. I remember some of you asking before, how do you meditate? We talked about emptiness. How do you meditate on emptiness? You have to first find the object of negation. You analyze, see how it looks. And then through logic, through reasoning, realize that it does not exist the way that it appears. Recognize that there's two things happening. One thing is it's appearing as truly existent, and also the ignorant mind is believing it, is conceiving there's something behind that appearance, that there's really an I here. Not only is the I appearing, but it's true. It's real there. It's really there. So when you have the realization of emptiness, you've seen, you've applied a wisdom, developing wisdom which is no longer grasping to that as true, the conceived object, true existence. There's the appearance of true existence, and there's the conceived object, right? Do you see the difference? The appearance, like say for instance someone appears as Santa Claus, the conceived object is that's really Santa Claus. Or if you're the adults sitting downstairs drinking your eggnog, that's Uncle Charlie, or that's Dorje or something, right? You don't conceive of that as being Santa Claus. So we have the appearance of truly existent I, and we believe it. We have an ignorance grasping to that as true. When you use reasoning, you develop a wisdom that is the antidote of this grasping to the I. It's a wisdom that sees the conceived object does not exist. It's just like finally feeling when you grow up a little bit and no longer being afraid by the shadows. There's no boogeyman in there. Before, you still see the shadows, but you no longer are afraid there's a boogeyman in the shadows.
So at that point, Venerable, are you in nirvana?
You're not in nirvana, because not necessarily in nirvana. You might be in nirvana, but nirvana means you've applied this meditation on emptiness again and again on the path of seeing. Well, first, you'll have some conceptual understanding of emptiness, some certainty that phenomena are empty, the self is empty. And that meditative equipoise also will be like that. Just emptiness is appearing, space-like meditation on emptiness. But it's not nothingness because it's been induced by that. It's just like when you think, you wake up from a dream and you were afraid something terrible had happened in the dream. You've ever had a dream like that? Like a nightmare, really. And then you look around and say, it was just a dream. Now, of course, your mind is not in meditation at that point. But say, for instance, you were just to concentrate on the fact, the object of my fear, the dog chasing me, or the fact I wasn't prepared for my final exam, or whatever, I'd gone, maybe the nightmare was, I went into the final exam and I couldn't answer a question. I hadn't studied all term, Maybe that was your fear. And then you woke up trembling and crying or something. Then you realize, that's not the case at all. So if you were just to concentrate on the non-existence of the object of the fear, the dog chasing you, or that you were killed by someone, or you were whatever, you realize that that doesn't exist at all. That would be like the certainty that you'd have in realizing emptiness. All that would be appearing to your mind was the non-existence of something. There was no dog. So, of course, that has other ramifications. When you're awake, you have a conceptual mind thinking other things. But in a meditative equipoise, all you're doing is you've got that certainty. That certainty has come about, but it's no longer thinking, I am not truly existent. This is it. There's no thinking going on. Just that realization. Then subsequent to that, when you arise from that, there's the certainty that phenomena are empty of true existence. So that's brought about, first of all, sequentially. First of all, by realizing, first by a correct assumption, presumption, correct belief, then by realizing it, then by realizing it with samadhi, then with a combination of tranquil abiding and penetrative insight on the path of accumulation, culminating, preparing you or connecting you to the path of seeing when you have a direct realization, no longer with a mental image of emptiness. It's at that point you start to cease the delusions, have true cessations, until the point through the path of meditation, when the last delusion is ceased, when all of them are totally ceased, you've applied the antidotes and they are totally ceased from the root, you've attained nirvana. Before that, it's not actually nirvana. If on the path of seeing, you're not on nirvana. You haven't attained nirvana. Even on the path of meditation, you haven't attained nirvana. It's only on the path of no more learning. So next time, I'll try to mention a little bit more about these 5 paths, because the mantra, gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi, the interpretation is that this refers to the 5 paths. Path of accumulation, gate. Path of preparation, gate. Path of seeing, paragate, completely gone. Parasamgate, gone completely beyond, or is it gone beyond, gone completely beyond. Bodhi is the path of no more learning, enlightenment, graduation. So let's dedicate the merits that we've generated tonight, conventional merits. Try to calm your mind and recall that we've created virtuous karma tonight. This is what the dedication is. Also, you can dedicate the virtue in your mind stream that you may have dedicated other times before, but that has not yet matured and ripened. You can dedicate again and again. It's just like if you have money in the bank, you can increase your determination. That's going to save for college tuition or for retirement or something. Dedicate the merits you've created in the past, that you've created today, tonight, that you will create in the future. Due to these merits, may they not simply ripen in my samsaric happiness, but may they become the cause in whatever way for my continual development along the path, leading up to enlightenment, the realizations that bring about enlightenment, so that I can spontaneously benefit all sentient beings and be like the Guru Buddha, perfectly like mother and father for all sentient beings, friend for all sentient beings, guiding them out of their suffering, confusion, bringing them to the other shore due to these merits. And as the Bodhisattvas do, meditate on the emptiness of the 3 spheres. So it's just as in the state of emptiness, there is no eye, no ear, no nose, and so forth. There is no attainment, no non-attainment. So also there is no karma, no truly existent karma. From the perspective of emptiness, there is no goal, truly existent goal, the way that we conceive of, that our mind, with ignorance, grasps at a truly existent goal that we're dedicating to. Even the act of dedication is empty of true existence. So letting go of grasping to those, try to make a perfect dedication within the emptiness of the 3 spheres.